Hi, my name is Jessica, and I have too many books on my TBR. If you've been here for a while, then you know that over the past few years, I have been making an effort to reduce my physical TBR. This has been a project several years in the making. My TBR did used to be over 200. We are no longer at that, thank goodness. But my TBR is still over 150. If you are new here, then I'm gonna tell you a little bit of Jessica lore. I have been a reader my entire life. When I was young, I was an extremely avid reader, got in trouble in class for finishing my work and doing a very sloppy job so that I could then read whatever book I brought to school that day. However, once I got a little bit older, I did fall out of reading just simply because, college and life and things just get really hectic. And I kind of went through this period where I forgot how much I love to read. Thankfully, around 2018, way before I ever made my first video on this channel, I got back into reading. I think that this is an experience that a lot of us have when we fall out of reading and get back into it. There were years worth of books that I had never even heard of. And not only that, I no longer knew what I liked as a reader because it had been so long since I was actively reading and seeking out fiction. So as a result, for several years, I was buying more books than I could read. And I have not stopped buying books at any point, though thankfully I have been a lot more conscientious of which books I do purchase. The fact remains, for my own personal needs, my TBR is way too long. The problem that has arisen is because way back in 2018, I bought more books than I could read, and then in subsequent years did the exact same thing. I have books that have been on my shelves for over 6 years that I have not read. And now I look at them and I have changed as a reader and I no longer know whether I am interested in these books. I hate unhauling books without at least giving them a try. You always have that little bit in the back of your head, like, what if this is an all-time favorite? That is the point of this series that I am now doing. If you can help me come up with a name for this series, that would be great, because I have absolutely no idea what this series should be called. But the idea is that instead of just unhauling the books that have been sitting collecting dust on my shelves, I'm going to at least give them a try. I have no idea how this series is gonna go. I might find 5-star reads. I might DNF a significant amount of these. To kick this series off, I have chosen 2 books. Both of them are the first book in a young adult fantasy series, and both of them have been on my shelves for at least 5 years. And I know that because I had both of them when I moved into this house, and I still haven't read them. There's further shame with both of these books because I bought the entire series and I haven't read them, haven't even picked up book 1. So the book that I'm gonna go ahead and kick this new series off is This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. When I first got back into reading, Victoria Schwab's Darker Shade of Magic had just come out. I think the first 2 books were out, and I read both of them immediately and I loved them. And then everybody was also talking about this series. I found this duology on clearance and I bought both of them, and guess what? I never read them. So this is the book that I'm going to be starting with. This is a young adult fantasy, and you follow 2 characters in this. And in this world, when you do something evil, it causes monsters to be born. And that's really all I know about this series. I probably knew more about it, 6 years ago, but I do not any longer. I also am going to be reading Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor, which is basically the exact same story as the Victoria Schwab series. I read Strange the Dreamer duology and I loved it. And when I saw that I could get a box set of Laini Taylor's other series for like $10 for all 3 of the books. I was like, sign me up for that. Obviously, I love Strange the Dreamer so much, I must immediately read this book. Surprise, I did not immediately read that book, and it has been sitting on my shelf. Welcome to this vlog, where I'm gonna read some of the oldest books on my TBR, because to be perfectly honest, if I don't make a vlog forcing myself to read these books, it's not gonna happen. I'm simply not gonna read them, so I have to make content about it so that I can make myself read these books. This is the year that I am making a significant dent in my TBR, and it's starting here. I'll talk to you soon when I have an update about this Savage song. Guess who is a quarter of the way into this Savage song? I suppose you don't really have to guess. It's me. Not really much has happened, but I did finish part 1 of this book, which was really just kind of getting me invested into this world. I am pretty intrigued so far. I didn't realize, but I'm pretty sure this is like actually like fantasy dystopian. Basically, something happened, and now whenever you do something evil, if it's like a certain level of evil, it like spawns a monster. A lot of times in dystopian worlds, the individual is more safe when they're living in a city, even though typically within a city and dystopian worlds you also have to deal with like police states and fascism and stuff like that. So like it's not a good place to live, but like you're much less likely to die, you're much more likely to have access to like resources, food, and all of that stuff. But it is interesting because in this world, due to the fact that like monsters spawn because of human actions, cities become much less safe than living like out in the country. The higher the population, the more chance that there are to spawn monsters. And so we find out that there are 3 types of monsters. One is like a shadow type monster that will murder you and eat you. And what's interesting is those type of monsters are kind of like a hive mind, and they can only come out at night. And then there's another type of monster that is, I think all of them are sentient, like to different levels. But then the other 2 types of monsters have like human level sentience. One is kind of like this vampire type monster, and then there's the most rare type of monster, which is called a tsunai, and they eat your souls. And I'm not entirely sure how the different monsters are formed. I don't know if it's like every single type of murder will result in this monster spawning, every single thing of this will, I don't know, or if it's maybe just like the people that do it based off of some type of internal thing, like whatever human does it will spawn a certain type of monster. I don't know. All I know is that the tsunai monsters are the most rare. And in this book, we're following Kate, who is a girl, and August, who is a tsunai monster. They're living in this city called Verity, and the city is split into 2 halves. And basically, Kate's dad runs the northern half. He used to be a crime lord. Basically, he just lets anyone move into his city as long as they can pay for it. And he has like control of all of the monsters that live in like the northern half of the city, but none of the tsunai monsters live in the northern half of the city. They're super rare. I get the feeling that there's only 3 of them, and they all live and work for August's family. So like August's adoptive parents, they run the southern half of the city. And August calls the other 2 Tsunai monsters that we meet his brother and his sister. And I think those are like the only 3 ones in the entire city. If you live in the north half, the monsters had to pledge their allegiance to Kate's father, and if they didn't, he would kill them. And then if you're human, you have to pay to live in the northern half of the city. And like, if you don't pay, he feeds you to the monsters. Seems like a real great guy, real nice dude. Now, you can live on the southern half, but like the southern half of the city is not in good shape. It is much more dangerous there because the southern half, August's adoptive human father, he does not have control of the monsters. He has like a military force that goes and like tries to eradicate all the monsters. However, people are still committing crimes, so it's an impossible task to eradicate them all. So you don't have to pay to live in the southern half, but it's much more dangerous, and you might still get eaten by monsters. August's dad for sure seems a lot more ethical, but that doesn't change the fact that living in the southern half of the city is much more dangerous. At the start of the book, we are 6 years into this truce, and the truce is between August's dad and Kate's dad. And I don't know what happened. I'm assuming we'll find out as we go, but something happened 6 years ago. After whatever phenomenon it was that started these monsters to spawn whenever humans do something evil, August's dad and Kate's dad were basically fighting each other over control over the city. And then 6 years ago, something happened and August's dad did something. We don't know what. I'm assuming we'll find out. But because of that, whatever he did, they came to this truce and they literally split the city in half. Crossing is very monitored. I don't know too much about Kate. Her and August seem to be set up to be foils of each other. Basically, Kate has been banished from the city, because it seems like her father is pretty neglectful, but also for her own safety. And so because she wants to get back to Verity, she wants to live in the city, she has been just getting herself kicked out of boarding school after boarding school after boarding school until her father has no choice but to take her back. And then for August, I do have like a much clearer picture of who he is as a character. So August is this Tsunai monster, but really he just wants to be a normal human boy. He spends a lot of time reading and studying humans, but he also feels like he should be doing more. So one of his siblings, who's also this Tsunai monster, Leo, he is part of his father's military force that like goes around killing the other monsters, and August like wants to be a part of that, but his parents won't let him. He keeps insisting that he wants to do something to help, so basically they send him to start attending the same school that Kate is at. No one there knows that he's a monster. Everyone thinks that he's human, and so he's basically sent undercover to, I don't really know what yet, get like more information, I guess. It's like, honestly, I don't really know what he's gonna accomplish by just like going to the same school as Kate. Honestly, it doesn't really seem like that thought out, and part of me thinks like maybe his parents just like sent him there to give him something to do. But like, if they discover that he's a monster, I'm pretty sure they're gonna kill him. So I mean, it's very high risk considering I don't know how he's gonna come up with any useful information. Like, he's meant to be undercover getting info, but like about what? It's really interesting to see August studying all of the humans around him, and to be honest, like, he already seems to have quite a bit of empathy, but he's constantly like studying them, looking at like their faces, watching how their emotions play out, and like he just desperately wants to experience like the full breadth of humanity's emotions. He wants to help people, and Kate, on the other hand, wants to get rid of her human emotions. Kate is very motivated by wanting to impress her father, and so she is constantly shoving her emotions down. She is constantly struggling to get rid of her empathy, which is not something that I really recommend humans do. But it is interesting to see these two characters who are so obviously meant to be foils of each other, so obviously meant to be opposites. And what's really interesting too is at the end of part 1, Kate kills one of her father's monsters. Her father knows it, like he lets her kill it. Basically, Kate's like, let me kill that monster, and he's like, okay, kill them. On the flip side of it, August actually kills a human. The Sunai, like I said, they eat your souls. So August's dad, he has these 3 Sunai monsters that he considers part of his family, and I mean, he's gotta feed them somehow. If you are a human living on the south side and you do something evil enough to spawn like one of the worst monsters, then you are basically executed as a meal for one of the Sunai. So we get to see August go suck the soul out of this guy who we find out is actually like kind of a hitman, sort of. He is like, I killed a bunch of people and I have no remorse and I would kill them again. So you don't really feel bad for the guy that August kills, but you do feel bad for both August and Kate because you get to see, despite their actions, despite what's going on, neither of them wants to kill. Like, August does not want to kill, even though he has to kill to survive. And then on the flip side of it, even though you don't feel bad about this monster that Kate killed, you see that Kate doesn't really want to be killing anything. She's only doing it so that her father will appreciate her and respect her, and maybe they can have a better relationship. So honestly, I am very intrigued by these two characters so far. They have met at school. They've exchanged like 3 sentences. It seemed very normal conversation. I'm waiting to see what like the actual plot is going to be for this because I genuinely don't know yet. They have kind of hinted that like this truce between the North and the South side is very fragile, and everyone seems to just sort of like be waiting for something to happen to break the truce. So I don't know. I have no idea what the plot is actually going to be, but I like the characters so far, and I'm gonna keep reading. Maybe I will check in when I finish part 2. Hello, friends. If you could do me the absolute biggest favor and just don't look at me for this clip. I'm so very, very tired. I'm so tired. I have had 2 doctor's appointments within 7 days of each other, and one was like some invasive testing. I'm just so tired. If you don't know, I've just been dealing with like chronic nausea. Don't know what's going on. There's a bunch of potential causes so far. Nothing is telling me what's happening. First of all, the being nauseous all the time really takes it out of me. It wears me down so much. Also, the doctor's appointments are stressful, and like the testing wasn't fun. And then also it's like right in the middle, like both doctor's appointments were in the middle of when I normally sleep. That also has me completely exhausted. It's a mess and I'm so tired. So just don't look at me. Look at something else for this clip. I just wanted to do a quick update. I'm a little over halfway through this Savage song. I just finished part 2 and things are kicking into gear. I have found out some information about what happened in the past. Not super specifics yet. There's still quite a few things about this world that I don't know. I'm not going to tell you what I found out, but I did find more out about why like both of the city leaders of like the North and South half, why they have agreed to a truce. And it does seem that like the major plot is going to be like just what's going on in the city in terms of like, is the truce going to fall apart? Will there be warfare? And also, is the warfare going to be between like North and South, or is it going to be between humans and monsters, or is it going to be some weird amalgamation of alliances? Some of the monsters in the north half of the city are not necessarily, I guess, happy. I don't know, want to murder more people, probably. They want to eat. I mean, hunger is a very powerful motivator. August is a Sunai monster, but there's two other types of monsters. And I know for a fact that I think they're called like Malachi monsters. Those are the vampire ones. Those ones are just as sentient as humans and they drink blood. And then the other type of monster is all like, it's kind of like a hive mind. And I don't know as much about them. Like, I don't know where their intelligence level is, but it does seem that some of the monsters in the northern city are not necessarily happy with like what the status quo is. So I am learning a little bit more. And like I said, it does seem that the plot moving forward is simply going to be, will the truce hold? Probably not. Everyone in the book is like, the truce isn't going to hold, the truce isn't going to hold, the truce isn't going to hold. So I'm assuming that the truce isn't going to hold, but I'm assuming that the plot then is going to be what happens once the truce is no longer holding. But what makes it more interesting, Kate has now figured out what August is, and we don't necessarily know what is going to happen with that information. The second part of the book ends with two of the Malachi vampire monsters attacking the school. So now we're gonna have to deal with like the ramification of that and like what their motivation was there, and also the way they executed the attack was suspicious for reasons that are redacted. And so I'm interested to see what people think about the attack, but I'm just eager to see what's gonna happen now that Kate knows. I'm curious to know what she's gonna do with that information. It is not completely off the table for her to try to kill August. I mean, I don't know that she will. Maybe she won't. I genuinely have no idea. There's so many different things that could happen here. I would love to tell you that I'm gonna go read and finish this book, but I'm gonna be so real right now. I am not living la vida loca, and I'm gonna go take a nap. I will talk to you later. Hello friends, I have finished this Savage song. It's good. It's a really solid, good book. I'm gonna go ahead and give it 3 stars. It was an enjoyable experience. It was a fun time. I don't think I'm gonna continue this series though. I think that this is just one of those that, you know, it is no longer for me. While I would say that I do like the characters of August and Kate, and I do think that the plot is interesting enough, I don't feel personally attached to either August or Kate. This is a book for young adults, and I am no longer a young adult. I don't really have anything too critical to say of this book. I think like largely it's a good solid book. I will say that for me personally, I don't think it interacted enough with the themes that were presented in this book. You know, that juxtaposition between person and monster, and like who is who, and not everything is as it seems. And I don't think the book interacted in a way with those themes that would keep me reading into book 2. I'm not saying that the book thematically is bad, but more just that I don't think that this book necessarily had anything new or anything nuanced to say about it. I do think that like if we would have gotten a little bit more philosophical, then perhaps I would have wanted to continue into book 2, but instead we went into like super action sequence, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you are a younger reader and you really like some fast-paced action, I think the second half of this book is gonna knock your socks off. But it wasn't for me, and that is not a fault of the book. To be honest, it's also like not a fault of me. It's just a mismatch of this is not a book for me, and it might have been when I was 13 or 14, but it no longer is. I did not DNF this book, so like that is a win. This is a good book. I think if you love young adult, if you like dystopian, if you like things that are really action-packed and fast-paced, then I think that you could really enjoy this book. I was never bored at any point. It's a good story. I'm not going to continue, but that is 2 books that are moving off of my physical TBR. Like I mentioned, next up I'm going to read Daughter of Smoke and Bone. This one is like an angel and a devil fell in love somehow. That's all I know about it. That is the tagline. I did put this one second because I do have higher hopes for it, purely based off of how much I loved the Strange the Dreamer duology. Absolutely love that series. We'll see. I'm keeping my expectations at a manageable level. I will chat with you soon. Hello. I am 100 pages into Daughter of Smoke and Bone. I'm really enjoying this story. I remember loving Laini Taylor's writing when I read the Strange the Dreamer duology, but now that I'm like actually back in a book that she's written, I realize like I love her writing. Just like 100 pages in, I'm just like sinking into this world, and I have to say the intrigue in this book so far is really high. I don't know if like the intrigue is gonna last like the whole time because like I said, I'm only 100 pages in, so I'm really just getting like a little taste of what the plot is going to be. But there's been just like so many little questions asked here and there and like all over in these 100 pages just sprinkled in that I'm like, what's going on? What is happening in this world really? Okay, let me talk about this book. Like I mentioned, kind of the tagline of this is once upon a time an angel and a devil fell in love. It did not end well. That kind of gives like, sorry, dog hair on my mouth. That kind of gives the vibe of what this book is about. So far we're following this girl named Karu, and she is supposedly a human girl. I'm not entirely sure yet because we've gotten both hints that she is like definitely human, but also hints that maybe she's like human with an asterisk, like maybe not fully human. She has been raised and lived the majority of her life in this like pocket dimension where she lives with a bunch of chimeras. There's like a Gorgon lady there, like a snake lady like Medusa, and then what is described as kind of like a minotaur, except instead of like a bull, he's half leopard, but like maybe also part dragon. So she basically was raised in this weird pocket dimension by a bunch of chimeras, and one of the chimeras trades teeth for wishes, which is weird. So weird. People either bring themselves or Carew is sent out to retrieve from hunters and poachers and grave robbers and murderers. They get teeth. Some of them are like animal teeth, some of them are human teeth, any type of teeth. And they trade them to this minotaur dude named Brimstone for certain types of wishes. And like there are different denominations of wishes, from like really, really petty, pathetic ones that can like barely do anything, all the way up to like ones that could change the time-space continuum. It's super, super weird. Like I said, it's kind of like this little pocket dimension. And so Carew, at the same time that she was raised by these chimeras, she currently is living in Prague, and she is an art student. She's going to this art high school and taking art classes, and then sometimes she has to run errands to pick up teeth. It's super interesting because, first of all, we don't know what he's doing with his teeth. We don't know where Carew came from, and like why she was raised by these chimeras. And she basically has spent her entire like teenage years traveling. So like when she was a child, they kept her in this pocket dimension, but then like as she got older, they needed to start sending her to school. For a while she went to school in New York, and then she went to a school in England, and now she's going to a school in Prague. Honestly, it seems like a very, very fascinating life, but like also Carew is a little bit lonely. She can't really make like deep human connections because like how do you explain I was raised by a minotaur and a gorgon, and sometimes I have to go run errands just real quick. I'm gonna pop into Canada to go get some wolf teeth and bring them back to my dad who sells them for wishes. Like how do you explain that to other humans? So she has a really fascinating and full life, but like it's also a very lonely life. I do have to say, I do not love the discussion of like all the animal parts that are brought to this shop. It is icky. I want to say like it's not graphic. Like there's no like graphic depictions of animals being like ruthlessly slaughtered. Also, people bring human teeth sometimes, and they don't necessarily get these human, like some people rob graves for human teeth, but not all of them do. Sometimes the teeth come from like human traffickers and murderers. Brimstone's clients are not good people. So it is not really like the most fun thing to think about. He's in this pocket dimension that's not really part of the human world, and in that pocket dimension there are two doors, and one door is a portal to, it's kind of like Howl's Moving Castle, where like when you like change the portal you can like change where the door is. So like the door on the human side is always like the same door, but when you're in Brimstone's house you can open up to like 100 different doors in the human world, but there's a second door in Brimstone's house, and Carew has no idea where that door goes. So far, it's just been Carew running errands for Brimstone, and then going to school and hanging out with the friends that she is able to make. But we've also gotten these little snippets of another character named, I think Akira was the name. I might be misremembering because, to be honest, he doesn't have that much page time yet. But Akira is an angel. Him and his angel buddies are going around and they're like marking all of Brimstone's doors. He says that like once all of the doors are marked, then the end will come. And I don't know about you, but that does not sound good for humanity. And then Akira tried to kill Carew, and she only just barely escaped. I'm very excited to see what's gonna happen next. I genuinely have no idea. I'm kind of just excited to be along for the ride of this, and like I said, I'm really, really loving Laini Taylor's writing style. I had forgotten how much I enjoy it, but it just like, it feels good. It feels good to be back in one of her worlds. I'm gonna go back to reading, and I will talk to you when I talk to you. I finished Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor, and I am so happy that I read this book. Congratulations to me for doing this. I did mean to do a halfway update for this book, but honestly, it's not really a book that you can say too much about. Not much actually happens. Things kind of do move slowly in this book. We're kind of taunted with little things that just simply don't add up, and not much has happened, so it's like, well, what am I going to update you on, because there's not really any things happening. Now, don't take that to mean that the book is boring. The book is not boring. It is a slow-paced book. Plot-wise, not a lot happens, but character-wise, we have things happening. Basically, nothing happens, and then all of a sudden we get a reveal. It's not like a shock at all. It is very obvious. You will see it coming within the first 100 pages. But after that reveal happens, then we get just a crap ton of answers. I think I'm gonna give it 4 stars. To be perfectly honest, it's on the weaker side of 4 stars. Not enough to move it to a 3.5. Still definitely a 4. I do think the strength of this is the combination of the writing and the characters. I do think that there's going to be more going on in the plot in books 2 and 3 in this series. The last 70 pages, we just find out so much information that I just can't imagine that there's not going to be a lot happening in book 2. We find out so much more about the angels. We find out so much more about the chimera. We find out so much about the world. We find out about the teeth. That's gross and fascinating. I'm feeling very satisfied with the information that I learned. I'm also feeling very satisfied with how this book ended. I will definitely be continuing with this series. I absolutely will be picking up book 2. I mean, hopefully this year. Hopefully it's not like some of the series that are in my like series purgatory where I've been working on them since 2020 and I still haven't finished them. We're not going to talk about that. One of the reasons that I like this book so much is the writing style. I think Laini Taylor's writing style just clicks somehow for me. I love it. There is like this fairy tale aspect to it, and there is whimsy involved. I like both of those things so much. I just personally really connect with the writing style of this book. I don't think that everyone is going to connect as fully as I did. I did also want to say, if you're going to enjoy this book, this is an instant love book. There are some things that are very of the time that this was written. This book was first published in 2011. And you can tell, like there are just, some things in here where you're like, yeah, that was written in 2011. It's not necessarily a compliment, but like also it is what it is. I'm sure that like in another 10 years we're gonna be like, oh yeah, that was written in 2020. You can tell. Karou definitely has some of her not like other girl moments, and not to the point where it ruined my enjoyment of the book by any means. Karou, I like her as a main character, so none of those little moments really mattered to me in the grand scheme of things. But I did also want to say that this is very much insta love, which like first of all is kind of the time period. I think Laini Taylor kind of handles it well. In this one, the insta love definitely does feel a little bit more like grand and epic. It feels like true kismet. It does feel a little bit like it is fate. I think part of that is due to the writing style and to the fact that this book does feel like a modern fairy tale. One of the reasons I love the book so much is because it does feel like a modern fairy tale. I think Laini Taylor's writing combined with the fairy tale nature of this, it just lends a sense of believability to this grand kismet, this like intertwining of fates that really can't be avoided. One thing I did want to say, and this is something that I don't like. I am worried how it's going to proceed in the rest of this book. It is like sort of, I would say like mild spoilers, but yeah, if you want to read this book and you want literally zero spoilers at all, like nothing, skip to like the last 30 seconds of this video video where I'm telling you goodbye and asking you to subscribe to my channel. Within this world, we know that there are like the chimeras and the seraphim, like the angels, and we know that these two species are in conflict. The tagline is that an angel fell in love with a devil. Obviously, you have this like angels versus demons type of situation going on, but I really hate when the love interest character is part of the oppressive society, part of the potentially colonizing society. The angels are the oppressors within this world. They have enslaved and killed the chimera for centuries. So this like fight between them is really more just like the chimeras rebelling against being slaves and second-class citizens and against the oppression. And I hate the trope of the love interest being a part of that oppressor group and then finding out that, oh, like the people we've been oppressing, they're actually like intelligent people. They're not the monsters. They're not the beasts that I've been told my entire life. Maybe we shouldn't be enslaving them. And the reason that the love interest learns that is because he or she falls in love with someone from the oppressed class. I despise that trope. I understand that like when you are raised a certain way and when you live in an echo chamber and you are not exposed to things, I understand that it can be very difficult to unbrainwash yourself. It can be very difficult to challenge the way you look at the world. The love interest in this book, honestly, he did not really have any choices in his life. When you don't have freedom and you're living in an echo chamber and you're very controlled and you're being told something and fed only a certain type of information, yes, we cannot hold that person entirely responsible for believing what every single adult in that person's life has told them. It can be hard to come across information that challenges your worldview, and therefore it can be very hard for you to internally unlearn that. And I have empathy for that. However, I just really dislike the, oh, maybe we shouldn't be enslaving people because maybe they're not as bad as I thought they were because I fell in love with this one. I am hesitant to see how that is going to play out. In my opinion, there's a clear right and wrong, and the oppressors are bad. I am nervous to see how the conflict between the angels and the chimera is going to play out moving forward. I did enjoy this enough that I do want to read book 2. I am hesitantly hopeful that it will be handled in the best way possible, but I am also nervous. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Thank you for spending time with me and letting me make content about books that I probably wouldn't have read unless I had a specific video to put them in. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. Hopefully this will not be the only episode in this series. I would love for this idea to become just like a small series that I do every couple of months on my channel. So thank you for being here today. Let me know what book has been sitting on your TBR way too long, and maybe you can use this video as motivation to read it because maybe it'll be great. Stay safe this week, stay warm, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.